Hello and welcome to Talk Africa. Now, the multi-million-dollar Ethiopian Grand Renaissance Dam is Africa's biggest hydro project and the world's 9th largest. The dam is being constructed on the River Nile, originating from Lake Victoria and pouring its waters into the Mediterranean Sea. The Nile is shared by 11 riparian countries, namely Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Ethiopia, Eritrea, South Sudan, the Sudan, and Egypt. In particular, the Nile is the primary water source for Egypt and the Sudan. Standing at some 170 meters tall, the dam can hold up to 70 billion cubic meters of water. Now, the entire project covers some 1,800 square kilometers. Well, the $4.8 billion project is funded by Ethiopian bonds and taxpayers. Upon completion, the Grand Renaissance Dam will generate some 6,000 megawatts of electricity, which is expected to satisfy Ethiopia's growing demand for power to drive its economy. Well, Ethiopia also plans to sell some of the power to Sudan, South Sudan, Kenya, and Tanzania. It is currently 40% complete, and construction works are expected to end by 2017. A deal over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam remains elusive at the moment. There have been several rounds of talks between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia in a bid to find a negotiated solution, even as Ethiopia presses on with the multi-billion project. Egypt says the construction would affect its share of the Nile waters, but Ethiopia insists the dam is necessary for its development. From Addis Ababa, CCTV's Girum Chala takes a look at what the Grand Renaissance Dam means for Ethiopia and why Addis Ababa is playing hardball.
More than 6,000 megawatts of electricity is expected to be generated from the Grand Renaissance Dam. Ethiopians say the dam is their pride and hope.
This project has become a flag carrier project. As you know, those ones who were in the climax of civilization on our way, we have lost it and begin to live on the generosity of the rest of the world. We have failed to earn that minimal livelihood that we depended on others. So the construction of the dam heralds a note of optimism in that it shows we as a people are committed to regain our lost glory.
On completion of the dam, Ethiopia plans to export power to neighboring states like Sudan, Djibouti, Kenya, South Sudan, and Tanzania. This will integrate the region's power supply and lower the cost of electricity.
The export of power, which means foreign currency for Ethiopia, and mainly the regional integration. You know, when we export power to the neighboring countries, it means that we will have a stable relationship with this country. So this is a basic, benefit of having such big generations. So saying that, having economic stability means political stability, means many other things as well. So this is very, very important.
Publicly funded, the Grand Renaissance Dam is now about 45% complete. The government in Addis Ababa says the project has created a sense of ownership among the local people.
The people were waiting for it. The people were looking for something that energizes them. The people were determined that we have to begin to make use of our natural resources to defeat poverty. So there was this consensus in the making. And once the project was announced, everybody supported it.
But controversy has dogged what would be Africa's #1 and the world's 9th largest dam. A stalemate persists between Ethiopia and Egypt over the project. However, the Nile states are currently engaged in constructive talks to solve the impasse. Beyond the construction of the multi-billion-dollar Grand Renaissance Dam, Ethiopia is undertaking close to 12 projects at the moment, all aiming at generating the much-needed power for the country's growing economy. Experts say the country has more than 1.5 million megawatts of electricity generating capacity if all energy sources can be explored. Girum, Chala, CCTV, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, in Cairo, water resources ministers from Sudan, Egypt and Ethiopia, along with 12 experts, converged for the second round of tripartite talks on the grand Ethiopian Renaissance dams a month ago and picked a consultancy firm to produce new studies on the dam's impact. In May 2013, images of the dam's construction stirred Egyptian public anxiety about the possible effects of Egypt's water supply. So why exactly has the project continued to be a source of concern for the Egyptian government? Here's CCTV's Yasser Hakim from Cairo.
The Nile has been the main source of water since Egypt's existence thousands of years ago. Now, even more so. A considerably growing population, the lack of other sources, and the country below water poverty levels makes it essential not to sacrifice a drop of Nile water. That is why the Renaissance Dam project is a major concern to Egyptians.
There must be a strong stance against the Ethiopians. They want to harm Egypt. Why build on the Nile? They have many rivers.
Egypt is sticking to the 1929 and 1959 agreements signed with the British, which stipulate that no projects should be made on the Nile without approval from Egypt and Sudan. The International Court of Justice stated in 1989 that all water agreements should be dealt with as border agreements. They should not be amended. Egypt therefore views the dam as an infringement of international law. Rather than the use of force, Egypt was active diplomatically. It wants to push Ethiopia to halt construction until it receives guarantees the water flow to Egypt will not be affected.
Ethiopia designed all the dams in the country in the way that does not harm significantly the downstream countries. This is a principle. This principle by itself is very important. No need of giving a guarantee. For rainfall, you cannot give a guarantee. It depends on flood is depending on the rain. So Ethiopia stick to this principle. We will continue sticking to this principle.
In the latest round of talks in Cairo, the tripartite chose a British law firm to conduct a tender for a shortlisted 7 engineering consultancy firms. The winning bid will oversee a technical report on the Renaissance Dam.
The report will include the effects of the dam on the water flow to Egypt. It will study the economic, social and environmental effects of the dam on the 3 nations. The report will also show whether there are safety issues with the dam on all Egyptians and in Sudan.
Experts say it will take at least a year for the report to be ready.
The next round of talks is expected in Khartoum in November. In spite of the positive words to the media, Egyptian officials are worried. They say talks are going at a slow pace, while Ethiopia has already constructed nearly 40% of the dam. Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
Now, the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam has dampened relations between Addis Ababa and Cairo. However, in a development some see as a positive sign going ahead, both countries have agreed to dialogue. Egyptian officials have also offered to increase trade with Ethiopia and say a new atmosphere now exists over the question of sharing the Nile waters. After the break, my guests on the program will discuss the issues separating the two sides and how they're being resolved. To stay with us. Welcome back to Talk Africa. Now, Egypt, Ethiopia and the Sudan have agreed to a negotiated dialogue over the Nile waters. So what is the standoff over Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam? Well, joining us from Cairo to discuss this issue is Dr. Nasir Alam, who left office 3 months ago as Egypt's Water Resources Minister. During his tenure, Dr. Alam was in charge of the Nile Dam talks and he led negotiations with Ethiopia. From Addis Ababa, Dr. Yilmaz Aleshi, the lead negotiator of Ethiopia's Tripartite National Committee. And in studio with me is Dr. Simon Otieno Dulo, an expert on the Nile and a senior lecturer and associate water engineer at the Institute for Climate Change and Adaptation at the University of Nairobi. Gentlemen, thank you and welcome to Talk Africa. Dr. Nasir Alam in Cairo, to you first. Now, there have been several rounds of talks, negotiations between Egypt, Ethiopia, Sudan over the Nile waters in the past few weeks. What is the current status now of the talks? Have they stalled or are they ongoing?
Well, I would like first to clarify that is no negotiations about the dam started since 2011, the start of the construction of the dam till today. It is just a matter of having some technical committees, and the first one is the International Tripartite Committee, really to review the Ethiopian studies for the dam, which ended up with the final report at the end of May 2013. That is, most of the studies or all of the studies are inadequate and incomplete. And they made a recommendation to redo the studies. Then the existing committee now between the three countries, they are trying to implement the recommendation of the Tripartite Committee by doing the studies. And the studies include the environmental part, talking about the impacts of the dam on the downstream countries. And Ethiopia is committed to complete the construction remarks, because he had some severe remarks about the design of the dam itself.
All right, but just from your point, though, if Egypt remains concerned about Ethiopia's, building of the dam there, what remains Egypt's concerns at this point, despite Ethiopia going ahead with construction of the dam?
In fact, Egypt is very concerned, not only concerned about the construction of the dam because of its huge capacity. The capacity of the dam is 74 billion cubic meter of water, and it is expected also that the seepage losses which will occur at the beginning of storage about 10 to 15 billion cubic meter of water. So the total about 90 billion cubic meter, which is about the same capacity of the High Aswan Dam. In other words, the water storage in the High Aswan Dam will be transferred to storage of the Renaissance Dam, right. And the High Aswan Dam will lose all the benefits and functions, and this will hurt Egypt very much in terms of hydropower production and water security as well.
Dr. Sheleshi, in Addis Ababa, you're hearing the concerns from Egypt, and of course, negotiations are ongoing. What is Ethiopia's reaction to these concerns of Egypt at the moment?
The negotiation is going on in a very good spirit. As Professor indicated, in May 2013, the International Panel of Experts delivered a report which showed us the dam is constructed following international standard, and we recommended to continue based on the initial design, which is now under construction. But the second recommendation as a package is to address in detail the benefit of the dam to the two downstream countries, and if there is any impact, to assess that in detail. In particular, recession agriculture in Sudan, and drought period operation in Egypt, and during filling.
If I can just jump in there, though, Ethiopia is going ahead with construction of the dam despite Egypt's concerns there. Though. Why is that?
You see, Nile is a shared water between 10 and now 11 countries. And Ethiopia generates 85% of the water from its country, and Nile for Ethiopia is also 70% of our water resource, 70. So now, because of the economic development in the country, we decided to develop hydropower. It's energy generation. And the dam is near the border. And as any expert sees it, hydropower dam is non-water consumptive.
Right.
And Ethiopia has a right to use its water resource. So we are in general acceptable principles. That's why we are continuing constructing the dam.
Dr. Alam, though, in Cairo, Ethiopia feels that the dam is being constructed there according to international standards. Do you agree with that assessment? And therefore, there should be no need for consent.
In fact, I like to comment on my colleagues' sayings. First one, that is the dam itself as the territory of Sudan and has nothing to do with the development of Ethiopia. It is completely or entirely or mostly is to export power to the downstream countries. That's one thing. The second thing, the committee never said go ahead and continue construction. In fact, they mentioned there are some critical comments about the construction design, about the foundation of the dam, about the possible failure and the sliding of the dam, and they recommend some critical improvements in the construction design itself. The third thing is the committee said that is the available studies on the environmental impacts of the dam on Egypt and Sudan, and that's account for the hydrologic impacts and the electrical impacts are not good enough really to evaluate, and they need to be redone completely. And they put the terms of reference for these studies in order to be performed. And now the objective is really to redo these studies and to hire the consultant to do it within 6 months' time. But the three countries, they are different about these 6 months. Some countries, they said 12 months, some countries said 18 months.
Right.
And in this case, if Egypt approves this, the dam will be almost completed before finishing the studies. So there is no benefit of the studies because Egypt's requirement is to reduce the size of the dam considerably in order to reduce the damage to Egypt.
Dr. Seleshi, though, in Ethiopia, Egypt feels that by the time the studies are conducted, the dam may be completely constructed. What is Ethiopia's view, though, here? Is Ethiopia going to stop the construction of the dam while the negotiations are ongoing, or it is powering on?
No. You see, first of all, what Professor said is really, respectfully, it's not correct. The international panel of experts report is now really public domain in the website. One can read. The dam follows international standard. The construction is following that. That's really stated there. The second reason, you see, in the 85% of water of the Nile, Ethiopia, now has the right to use that. I cannot understand why Professor is indicating we need to stop. The dam is safe and generating hydropower, follows international standard and only hold the mean annual flow of basically the mean annual flow of Blue Nile at the border. The evaporation loss there we can have is about 1.2 billion meter cube per year, and this loss is actually recovered downstream because of the reduction of flood in Sudan.
Right.
And all the benefits which for Sudan is very also for for Egypt. This is a dam what they will construct down on the road after 100 years or 150 years for themselves. We are doing that. So I could not understand the dam which benefits the three countries largely need to stop. Even the talk about that is really not understanding.
Let's look at the alternatives here for Egypt quite briefly, though. In the event that Ethiopia completes the construction of the dam, what are Egypt's alternatives?
Yeah, there are some principles which should govern how we can arrive at some solution which can satisfy the requirements of all three countries. One thing is to have all countries three winners. There is no bad effect on one of these countries. The second thing, which can be achieved through a less size dam, which can benefit Ethiopia, can benefit Egypt and Sudan as well, without very much of harmful impacts on the Egyptian water status and hydropower status. The second thing is to have the three countries along with southern Sudan, is to see how we can improve and save the water losses, the huge water losses, which more than 30 billion cubic meter in southern Sudan and southern Ethiopia. To increase the water flow, allow Ethiopia to do all the 4 dams they like to do on the Blue Nile, allow Egypt to substitute any shortage in their water share, produce more power and import, Egypt can import all the power from Ethiopia and in fact export it to Europe and the Arab world. And this is why we can improve even trade, we can improve a strong relationship between all the three countries, between the people, without hurting anybody. That's what I'm thinking of, with all my respect to the need, desire, and right of Ethiopia to develop their own water resource.
All right, to Ethiopia though, Dr. Seleshi, is that acceptable to Ethiopia?
What Professor said, some of the points are quite good, but there is no sound scientific and economical reason to reduce the dam size. The point is very clear. The dam size is taking into account the mean annual flow. That's a normal dam everywhere. It's not even like twice the size of we have as high as one dam. Second, the dam size effect is during filling. During filling, that's why we make it, unlike the other dams, into 4, 5, 6 years. This 4, 5, 6 years comes, if there is consecutive drought years, we have to fill it slowly, because taking more water from the Nile will affect significantly Egypt. That's the reason we make it 4, 5, 6 years. So the dam size, no need to reduce it. You know, the implication is that reducing the dam means, to what Professor proposed, from 50,000 gigawatt hour per year, it's about 6,000 gigawatt hour per year. This is reducing by half the whole capacity of energy generation for the region. And we lose the dam site for good. So there is no sound engineering basis. So the mitigation measure is to fill it slowly.
Dr. Dula, you've heard the arguments from both Ethiopia and Egypt. Is there any environmental concern, though, or any impact at all from the dam and from the concerns of Egypt if this process goes ahead?
I think the concern is, has been highlighted by Egypt very clearly, but then the solutions are already inherent in the design. So I agree with Ethiopia that indeed, if you have a chat with Egypt through the process of design, and the proposed filling of the dam, if that program is agreeable, to me that is the point of disagreement which should be very clearly looked at. That how can Ethiopia's proposed plan for dam filling be tied to Egypt's concerns of reduced water supply? So that alone to me is a key issue here, because the designs have already been made, the construction has started, so the intervention is how the operations of the dam and the filling can be redesigned or renegotiated.
Right.
I think that should solve the problem for now.
All right. Dr. Alam in Cairo, we're going to wind up in a moment, but from your point of view and as a lead negotiator with Ethiopia previously, though, can a consensus, though, an amicable consensus be reached on this situation?
Well, in fact, this is the issue. This is the real issue. That's why we're not listening to each other. Everybody is talking to himself. So I'm not really listening to the complaints. Regarding filling policies and operation policies, the impact of this on the whole damage or harm that the dam can cause to Egypt is not more than 5% of the whole harm. So even if we fill the reservoir for 30 years, the harm will stay, but with 95%, not really with the total amount. So I think we should sit together, we should talk together, we should listen to each other, we should be more concerned about the negative impacts on Egypt, because I don't think Egypt will never accept the dam with that size and will never go through negotiations only talking about filling and operation policy. We should look, and we must look at the size of the dam. If Ethiopia have a strong point for this, they should present it and convince us and convince the world, but I don't think they do have. And well, I think we have to start a real negotiation about this and not wasting a lot of time on some studies, and the dam was almost will be completed within 2 years. So
all right,
we have to be more serious about this, because Egyptian people are very concerned about the whole process.
All right, Dr. Seleshi, from your perspective, you're the lead negotiator of Ethiopia's National Committee. Can a consensus be reached, though, among all parties?
Yeah, I believe so, because, you know, Ethiopia has no intention at all to harm the downstream countries, either Egypt or, you know, Sudan. So what we want is our right, equitable and reasonable utilization of the Nile water. It's a shared water. So the concern is, as the professor rightly said, is the filling, how to fill it, because the future climate, we don't know that. And later on, drought period operation. On this, we are open to for discussion, and in fact, this is what now we are going for in the three countries tripartite talk.
All right,
Major task is these 2 points.
Dr. Dulo, you have the final word on this.
I think at this stage I would concur with the idea of a final resolution being realized in the next round of discussion, because indeed climate change effects have to be accounted for, and that is now very key. So the flood and drought management aspects and advantages offered by this dam can then now be actually analyzed, and the two parties agree on a way forward based on the key benefits and minimizing their fears in the long run. But as it stands, the project looks quite a good project, and the key issues are just addressing both Egypt's concern in terms of power production and availability of water during the drought spell, which possibly this dam can give key figures in the design specifications on how it will elevate that. And that is now Ethiopia's responsibility as Egypt puts it through.
All right, Dr. Simon Otieno Dulo, expert on the Nile and senior lecturer and associate water engineer at the Institute for Climate Change and Adaptation at the University of Nairobi. And from Egypt, Dr. Nasir Alam, who left office 3 months ago as Egypt's Water Resources Minister. And during his tenure at the ministry, he was in charge of the Nile Dam talks and led negotiations with Ethiopia. From Addis Ababa, Dr. Yilmaz Seleshi, the lead negotiator of Ethiopia's tripartite National Committee. Gentlemen, thank you very much for this very insightful debate. I'm Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Goodbye.